it is the site for the sediment flushing of Xiaolangdi hydropower project. We can see that today there is a multiple different gates opened, and we can also see that the sediment has been flushed out. And when it was disposed, there's going to be a mist between the water and sands. You can also feel the concentrations of the sediment. I can also tell you one detail, that is to say behind me, and if you touch it, there is a very thick layer of the sands. Every year, as the local staff told me, that the sands is also very heavy and thick, and there's also some of these thick sand there in the atmospheres. I can also tell you that I've been here for 1 to 2 hours, and during my stay here, my hair is also being covered with a thick sands. I am actually at the north bank of the hydropower project, while most of the tourists, they are at the south bank. They are quite close to this deposit gates. They can actually have a very close look at how this yellow dragon get on top of this gate. Starting from the 23rd of June, the annual visitors number has also been surpassing 10,000 people. So this is what we called, there's 9 turns of the yellow rivers, and it has deposited over 10,000 kilometers of sands. And we also have an ancient Chinese saying, that is to say, the water of the Yellow River comes from the heavens. And today we are here to visit one of the experts from the Ministry of Water Resources. So, hello everybody, I am Li Peng. I'm responsible for the Xiaolangdi hydropower project in the Ministry of Water Resources. So as Director Li has introduced us, the changes of the volumes is one of the major work for the department here. And this is also one of the major, so here we can also say that, could you please elaborate at our back what is happening right now? So what we are seeing here is actually the second phase of the changing volumes, which is the sediment flushing phase. The water sediment regulations. Right now, we started the 3 different tunnels for the Xiaolangdi hydropowers. Currently, every second, there is going to be 1,200 metric tons of the water running downward. So why does it have some of these yellow colors on it? What is the actual sediment concentration? In the first phase, while we have seen the outflow discharge, the water has been flushing to the downstream water reservoirs. And when this water has been reaching to our reservoir area, they are going to touch down and move the sands at the bottom of the reservoirs. So when the 2 reservoirs has reached into the bottom of this area, we can also see that this is actually a discharge of the sediment. According to the current meteorological station's observation, the number here is that for every single cubic meters, it contains 110 kilograms of the sands. That is a very huge concentration number, right? Yes, it's huge, but it's not the peak. This year, we can also see that the peak number has reached for around 250 kilograms per cubic meter. That is twice the number right now. We can also see from the sites that the splendidness and also the powers, the water bottles, and impresses us. And if you let me to describe it, I would like to say that the water is like a river sand, mud river. And also for the sands, it splashes. It's like using the magic to generating some of these wonders. Just as directly mentioned, that the work of the water sediment regulations can be divided into the different phases. So could you please elaborate me on the different phases? Actually, there are two phases. The first phase is the large volumes outflow discharge. There are two purposes of it. The one is to clear up the downstream rivers and bringing the sands in the downstream rivers to the sea to maintain the ecological balance of the downstream rivers. The second purpose is that for the Xiaolangdi hydropower stations in the pre-flood seasons, we are going to create a human-made flooding the downstream rivers. And this is actually taking two birds with one stone. And today we can also prepare one of the images on the site. That is to say, if the visitors come here a few dozens of the days ago, at the end of the June, they are going to see the total different views. At that time, that was clear water, and the image we are taking is at the beginning of July. The water started to be turning into clear to turbid. But if you come here a few days earlier, while we are using more and more tunnels, today we are using 3 tunnels. A few days ago, we were using 5 tunnels. That image or that kind of a view was much more spectacular than where we are. So here we have a session. We have a video clips that was shot at that times. We can actually ask our directors to show you the wonders that was taken at the site. We usually describe it as a white dragon getting out of the tunnels. And as you mentioned about the images, no matter for showing the videos or no matter for seeing the video clips, you are going to see that the Xiaolangdi hydropower station was covered with trees and all kinds of the greenness. This is actually, that water was representing the clearness of the yellow rivers and also the mist speckles. The mist splashes by the yellow rivers creates some of the rainbows. But right now, we are seeing the yellow dragons, the sediment scorings, and under the last volumes of the waters, the mist is created, and it is very clear to see the beauties of the yellow rivers as the mother river of China. And just you have mentioned, we have a clear river sites. That is to say, for the whole tunnels, it used to be an open site, which is going to see, which we can be seeing at our back. At the highest point, actually for the 3 tunnels, that is discharging the sediment, it is what we call the discharging sediment tunnels. At its upper side, you are going to see 1, 2, 3. So yes, there are some of the sediment from the sediment discharging tunnels. And if you come here to the Xiaolangdi hydropower stations, we are going to show you that no matter at the north gate or the south gate, you are going to facing these hydropower stations. On your right hand, at the upper side of on your right hand, what is happening? That is the normal discharging tunnels, which was used to discharge the waters, the floods and the sediments when the floods has come. Since its founding days, we have never seen this kind of a flooding tunnel being used because in the past 20 years, there was never such a flooding occurred. And also, our hydropower stations is a joint work between the downstream hydropower stations and the lower stream hydropower stations. If there are some of the large flood happens, the multiple hydropower stations is going to work in coordination. In the mainstream, we have the Sanxia hydropower stations, Xiaolangdi hydropower stations. In the downstream, we have the Luhun water reservoirs. All of them are playing different roles while we are discharging the tunnels. This kind of waves jointly created the different water peaks. Let's talk back to the sediment discharging work. We have been discussing the sediment discharging work. So what is the latest progress of the sediment discharging work? And up until today, we can see that we are in the second phase of this work. The sediment flushing phase is approaching its end. And what we can see here is that starting from this year up until this morning, according to the monitoring data of the Xiaolangdi hydro stations, the total sands discharged has been surpassing 150 million metric tons. Are these in line with our working target or working plans for this year? Yes. It's not too much different with what we have expected. We are actually meeting up with our plans. So when will this round of the sediment flushing phase ended? I think tomorrow we are going to finish the second phase, that is the sediment flushing phase. That's the reason why we are bringing this view to our viewers with CMG, because tomorrow there is no more such a yellow river seen again. The total outflow might be lower, and with a few days discharging the sands, the whole project is going to be reaching to an end. We have been talking about the flood prevention and flood resistant work. After we fulfill this part of work, what's next? And for the Xiaolangdi hydropower stations, it's already under way, and Xiaolangdi is actually one of the projects designed to tackle with the floods. We created some of the manual floods, the vast amount of the water, which is under control. We also have the natural flood. This is one part of the flood prevention and control work. After that, the water sediment is going to be resumed. One of the major targets for us is that we are going to prevent that for July, there's not too much water coming for the Yellow River. But if there's a flood coming in June, July, and August, we are going to resume its 211 water levels. And above that, we are going to have over 9 billions of the water, metric water tons. And definitely along the Yellow River, there's not one hydropower stations at the Xiaolangdi hydropower stations. We have multiple hydropower stations working in coordinations in order to deal with the floods. Just as our director Li has clarified my misunderstandings, I used to think that the water sediment regulation has nothing to do with a flood. But after I viewed Mr. Li, I would see that this is actually an overall project. You have flooded or discharged the sands, and there is around 900 metric tons being discharged, and we can guarantee the autumn seasons. We are going to have the autumn seasons, and we are going to making sure that these water reservoirs can undertake in these areas, and we are also going to see the backfills, and the backfill are not only used. We need to guarantee the regulations of the waters. It's a complicated scenarios. This is what we call there's a lot of functions. It can prevent the water reservoirs, and also these functions need to be played. So while we are regulating the water reservoirs, we need to think about with multiple targets, not only thinking about one target. One is the water prevention and control. I also need to think about the water volumes lived. I also need to keep enough water volumes for the power generation, because this is also one of the major important infrastructures in the state grid. But we are the largest regulators for the Henan state flood. We are responsible for the turbulence in the grid in the Henan province. So, for example, increases of these powers and with the large turbulent numbers. So for the other different power generations volumes, for example, the wind power, solar powers, it needs some of these regulating functions. There is multiple functions for it. While we are regulating it, we need to think about all the targets. So we are also thinking that in the microwaves, there's going to be the flood seasons for the yellow rivers. And we also need to arrange it. And also back to the Xiaolangdi hydropower project. I think this is actually a function-based, multiple function, overarching project. For such a project, the guaranteeing of its personal security is also the project's safety is very important. While we are discharging the sediment, we need to regulate and flushing all the sediment. And this is also going to make the water flows faster. If you are viewing these reservoirs at the upper side of these areas, you are going to see that this is an area covered with the green trees. And when the yellow river has been passing the middle streams, and finally it reaches the great valleys. So for the Xiaolangdi, it is located at the last valleys and the midstream of Yellow River. And the water flood from the Yellow River flushing from the Xiaolangdi stations is going to be finally reaching its target. You need to guarantee there's not too much sediment for the yellow rivers. So could you introduce us how will the Xiaolangdi hydropower station discharge the sediment? So second phase is that after we have reduced it, the Wanjiazhai hydropower station and Sanmenxia hydropower station is going to work in coordination with the Xiaolangdi hydropower project. And they are going to sediment these levels. The process itself is not something that is being planned by ourselves. It needs the scientific plans and regulations, the simulations, the computer simulations, and after that, we can get a very good highly efficient water discharging volumes. Generally speaking, the water discharging volumes is limited. The most important part for the Yellow River is that there's only a limited water volumes. We are going to use these limited water volumes. So if there's a water coming up, reaching our reservoirs, how will we bring these water reservoirs down? The first part is that we need to lower down the water levels. We are going to show the river beds on site, and with the river beds being exposed, the waters from the upper stream is going to flush it down. So if we cannot dispose the river beds, it's very difficult for us to control the process. This is what we call the water bank controls. It's quite complicated. So you might not understand what kind of water that you are controlling. First, you might be having a very good water bank controls. As I have mentioned, there is a very limited water bank flushings. If you can get a very good control of the water volumes and there might be some of the droughts occurred at the downstream. But if you are flushing too much water inside of in the downstreams, there's also going to be some of these droughts occurred. You need to balance the two sides, too much water or water shortage. So after the calculations of the downstream weathers, you came up with a number for the upper streams, and then you decided the total discharging. Today we have prepared some of these sketches. In these few days, we have heard a lot of scientific promotions to tell what is it. Could you please elaborate on here? So this is a sketches that introduces us what we called the abnormal heavy turbid. So there are two parts of these areas, and the two parts is going to see some of these changes. For those coming from the upper layers, there is also a very heavy. For this kind of waters, which is coming from the upper streams, the density is going to be very, very heavy because from the upper streams, there's actually a higher sands water flows. There's going to be actually here we can also see a sedimentation deltas. And while they are reaching to the front of our hydropower stations, they are going to see some of the backflows caused by the heterogeneous heavy flows. The benefits of it is that it has a higher efficiency of the water discharge. If there is no heterogeneous heavy flow occurred, when the water reaching my hydropower stations, they are going to make all of my clear water turbid. And if I want to discharge the same volumes of the water, I also need to discharge a lot of clear water. That is to say, a larger consumption of the clear water. At the same water volumes, you bring less sands. That is to say, lower efficiency to my work. Even if you are turning this water into the turbid ones, the other different sediments might not be bring out by the water. They might be sedimented in my reservoirs. So for us, we are using all kinds of technical methods to generate the heterogeneous heavy flows. So that is to say, using a water-saving method and a highly efficient method to flow the sediment. My working target is to use a small water volumes to bring more and more work. So just as you have mentioned, we need a very precise simulations to decide about the total water volumes. This is also very safe work. So I want to ask you that for these years, this is actually the 30th year for us to discharge the sediment. For these years, during the outflow discharging seasons, did we get some of the new equipment? So compared with the previous years, the major challenge is that the applications of the new productive force. As a Xiaolangdi hydropower station, its water regulation is of a higher challenge. There are a few different aspects. The first one is that the water hydropower product might be experiencing a large volumes numbers. The water volumes might be changed dramatically. That is also going to affect my product safety. Guaranteeing of the product safety means that I need the traditional methods. I need to apply more and more security guide on the hydropower stations. And the second one is that we need to apply more and more data regulations for this year. I can give you a few examples. For example, we are using the satellite to monitor the changes of these hydropower stations 24/7. And also, at the two sides of these hydropower stations, we have the automatic time settlers and monitor the changes of the hydropower stations. And inside, we also feel a lot of monitors and also the helicopters to talk about the flows and also the flows volumes in order to report with all of these data and have some of the background calculations. This is actually our monitoring we use. We used to be relying on the workers, but for the workers, they might be neglected some of these areas. For example, the waterfront with the drones. We can actually detect the waterfront and to see where does the wave comes from. Actually, the drones did not just surpassing the data back. The drones can also help me with our decision-making process. They are going to view or see whether there are some of the cracks on the banks. And this is also helping us with further explanations. Yesterday, I was showing some of the images, and we can also see the drone occurred. And at the drones, its base station is a white blocks without monitoring of it. We used to have some of the manual works. And we can also use the manual works to shoot some of the images where the humans cannot reach.
But with the lines, you can do it automatically. Actually, just as yesterday, as we have understood it, starting from last year, with the initiations of the drone regulation systems, it is being set up on the reservoirs to check the water disposals here. So just as I have mentioned, the water regulations, the first part of our work is to address the engineering security and safeties. We are adopting a series of the new equipment. Second is that we need the regulations of the waters. We need to understand the weather conditions in these areas. So if in these water reservoirs there is a very heavy downpour, it's going to affect the real-time water volumes. And for the Xiaolangdi hydropower project, we can actually last year we installed 2 rainwater detection radars, and this kind of rainwater detection radar is going to provide us real-time data about the rainwater. And this afternoon, I was at our center to see the radar scanning process because yesterday, the Meteorological Office of the Henan province has launched a pre-alarming. And in this afternoon, we can also see some of these clouds, which is being demonstrated here. Gradually, it's rising upward. So this is also going to help us to judge. And in these reservoirs, for the mountains and for the forest, are there some of the short-term rainfalls occurred, and does it affect the water reservoirs? These are some of these prejudgment here, and you don't need to. You can take a proactive actions when the water volumes gone up. Definitely, we can use the meteorological satellites or the information from the meteorological bureaus to give some of the precautions. But this year, in our hydropower project, we have these new 3 radars to help us to regulate the water flows more precisely. This is also going to help us with the judgments. After we have talked about that, let's come back to our initial targets. This is also one of the questions about the viewers with the regulations of the water flows. And we can see a lot of netizens. Actually, they are here, or they are at the downstream of the Xiaolangdi rivers. And so could you explain that since this kind of outflow season, there are going to be a lot of fishes? For the fishes and also ecological preservations, the Upper Stream Regulation Office has made a very good preparations for the Xiaolangdi water reservoirs. We have talked about the multiple reservoirs regulations. We also have the Luohun reservoirs, and they are also going to discharge some of the clear water here to lower down the sediment concentrations, and this is also going to protect the fishes. This is also one aspect of the stories. Just before I arrived here this year, with the help of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, we also have some of these regulated and scientific-based regulations. For example, for the fishes and the water reservoirs, we have captured some of the fishes in order to keep the eco balance. And also we have some of these questions from the netizens. A lot of the viewers seeing that they are driving the ships and also waiting for the rivers, and up until night they are still trying to catch up the fishes. But we can understand it very clearly. So definitely there are some of the large-scale fishes which has been washing down. And every year, this is what they call the fishing seasons, and this is actually a seasonal activities for the residents along the yellow rivers. But here we also need to remind our viewers, it is the flooding seasons, and it is what we call the June up and August down seasons, which means a lot of turbulence in these seasons, although the sediment discharging seasons is approaching an end. The large volumes of this process is still continued. The whole volumes or the whole rivers is of a higher efficiency. Actually, these large volumes means that there's a higher possibilities for the cracking down. So for the collapses. So this is a very dangerous activity. I suggest you to keep yourself safe and according to the data from the yellow rivers. According to the data about the yellow rivers and the government alongside the yellow rivers, they have reminded the viewers to be safe and do not risk yourselves and for fishing. And you can standing on the bank of the yellow rivers. You must be aware that before the summer seasons, there might be a lot of kids. They are trying to travel along the yellow side rivers. You need to be away from the banks of the yellow rivers. That, with Mr. Li's introductions today, we are going to wrap up the sediment flushing phase. Today, we are demonstrating you the sediment flushing seasons and let the viewers understand what is the major philosophies or understandings of these outflow discharges, and how after today the sediment flushing phase is going to be reaching to an end. And this kind of effort cannot be separated from the multiple organal effort from the ministries. That wraps up today's broadcasting. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today. For more information, please keep an eye with CMG's live streaming. I'll see you next time.